It's huge. You can't begin to overestimate it. You can't overestimate it. It's really huge. First of all, there's a kind of grassroots influence that has to do with this deep history of migration. I'll give you an example. I taught for like 10 years at the University of Chicago, and I had a sabbatical. I decided to take it in Oaxaca in southern Mexico, and I decided to drive down a la sort of Kerouac, but a little bit more sort of depressingly middle class. And I was a little concerned because I had I had a minivan, so it was a sort of soccer dad kind of disgusting kind of thing. And I was worried a little bit about my Illinois plates because I thought, well, I was in Oaxaca for a year with those Illinois plates, and actually I blended right in because half of Oaxaca has Illinois plates or other kinds of plates like that. I think that if I had driven, I was raised in Mexico City, if I had spent a year in Oaxaca with the Mexico City plates, I would have stood out a lot more than I did with my Illinois plates. And this is like, in rural Oaxaca. So the level of grassroots knowledge, integration is really not to be underestimated. Then at the level of sort of high culture, historically there was more resistance, and I would give myself as an example. I studied college in Mexico, and when I came to teach here 30 years ago, my first job was at NYU. It took me like 10 years to read a US history book because I figured I already knew it, which I didn't. Or I figured in any case I had to defend myself from it because I was so invaded. So the influence is such that, first of all, there's a kind of arrogance that comes with the sense that you already know it, which is usually false, actually, because you know a lot, but there's so much you don't know. The US is such a huge, complex country. And it's a little bit, has some parallels with the US. For example, US tends to, it's changed, but tended to see Spanish as a non-language, or an easy language. An easy language, as far as I could tell, meant that you didn't really have to learn it. That's what an easy language is from the point of view of the American education system. So nobody says German is an easy language. They figure that you have to learn it. But Spanish, apparently, if you say sí, no, adios, and 3 or 4 sort of, things like that, you seem to be home free. So there's a kind of arrogance on both sides that comes from, and a kind of ignorance from both sides, that comes from the intensity of the influence. But if I had to, I would say that the influence of the US on Mexico is much larger than the other way around, because it's the cultural industry has been so powerful. Mexicans are hugely fond of going to the movies. They're big watchers of television, so mass media is, very influential.